but it seems like the MCU is so adamant about being like, you guys don't like Ant-Man? We're going to make you like Ant-Man. You're going to have to watch these Ant-Man movies. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CBR Saga, CBR's one and only podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Ugly Dolls. Do you have a child who just loves ugly things? Well, you're in luck. Ugly dolls are hideous. Think of the most grotesque abomination you can think of, and Ugly Dolls will make it even worse. So go pick up an ugly doll today to make your weird child happy. But enough about corporate sponsorship. Let's get into today's episode. Kang! Kang is here. Sorta. Ish, maybe, possibly. It's very vague. Well, we know Kang is going to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp at Quantumania, and if this is really the next big bad of the MCU, then he needs to make an impact. Could this mean that Kang kills a beloved main character? Which one? And how would he do it? That's what we're here today to discuss, so let's get right into it. I'm joined by my co-host, Nick. Nick, how you doing today?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I guess my first big question as we get into this Kang-centric saga is, do you think Kang has the ability to be this next big bad that we're all kind of hyping him up to be? Do you think he can be on the same level, if not better, than Thanos?
Yeah, I think he's going to cheat to do it, personally. But yeah, and the reason I say that is because it's not just going to be him. It's going to be like multiple versions of him that are going to make him this big bad person. If there were like 20 versions of Thanos, I'd be a lot more scared than just we only got two. We got two versions. But that being said, I think Nathaniel Richards, Kang, has the ability, the mentality. He's a genius from the future where everyone's probably a genius, and he's a genius like above them. So yes, I think he has the mental capacity to be this villain who beats people with his intelligence and not with his big purple biceps.
Kang is interesting, and his journey in the MCU, both behind the scenes and what we've seen so far, has been fascinating, I think, because out of all the projects, out of all the trilogies and franchises of the MCU, I think it's kind of safe to say that Ant-Man has always been on even like the lower spectrum, hasn't been as revered, hasn't been as like, it's not the big franchise, right? It's not like the big three. It's not the new franchise starter, but it seems like the MCU is so adamant about being like, you guys don't like Ant-Man? We're going to make you like Ant-Man. You're going to have to watch these Ant-Man movies, because they did the same thing with Endgame by making it like you need to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp to understand the quantum realm and quantum zone and all that stuff, and all the science that goes beyond that. And now they're doing the same thing by making very early on that even before we knew that Kang / He Who Remains was going to show up in Loki. Before we knew anything about Loki, we were thinking that we had heard the news that Kang is going to be the villain of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, or he's at least going to be a part of it, which is insane, because when you hear that news, it's like Kang is potentially going to be the next big villain of the MCU, right? Like he's going to be the next Thanos, as people call him in that. And all of a sudden, he's going to be in Ant-Man 3. So it's like, dang it, now I guess I have to watch Ant-Man 3. We would already watch Ant-Man 3, but there's a lot of people who I guess just like, I can skip Ant-Man. What do you think of that decision overall to like kind of put Kang in Ant-Man?
It's interesting because they did kind of do that same thing with Ant-Man and the Wasp. I didn't really realize that until you pointed it out. Another thing it makes me sort of think of is what they did for Guardians of the Galaxy. So when Guardians of the Galaxy was coming out, no one had any idea what the heck this even was, but they said, hey, Thanos is going to be in this. So you got to check this one out, because Thanos, he was in that other one, he's coming. So I think that's sort of what they're doing. Ant-Man has never been this like overpowered character. Like I think he sort of gets swept under the rug a lot because Scott Lang especially is a guy that you don't really focus on as like a leader, like a take charge kind of person who's going to, make a huge difference in the MCU. But then they give him a role where he has to explain time travel to Captain America. And it's like, okay, wow, this guy who is like telling jokes every other second and is just like a single dad trying to find his way in the world has like a big part to play, whether he wants to or not. So in some ways it makes sense based on what they've done before. In other ways, I'm very, very confused.
I like what you said about putting. I was thinking about that of Ant-Man's role, and even in his own movies, he's not even the take charge person. Like
Right.
he's Scott Lang is like he just kind of listens and he kind of falls into these things, especially in the second one where he's like on house arrest and he just like he gets kidnapped because he's literally hearing those things from Janet, from the quantum realm, and it's just like now I'm part of this story where he could easily have not been a part of it at all, and even in the same for I do like how you brought up how he explained time travel to Captain America, because did he really explain time travel to Captain America, or was he just like, so I was in here for a short amount of time and it's what if we could use that somehow? Go. And then it's like that's basically his contribution about how this mechanical engineer explained he's supposed to be a mechanical engineer, and I don't think he hasn't shown his smart level. But maybe Ant-Man 3 is going to change that. Or Nick, now this could be the big thing. We've talked about Kang making an impact in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and we've kind of just discussed about Scott's role. So I'm going to suggest something really radical here, something that's going to hurt a lot, and that's Kang will conquer and kill Scott Lang in Ant-Man 3. Scott Lang is going to be no more. I think the MCU realizes this franchise is it because it's not as viable. It's not, they don't need Ant-Man much, but he's also a beloved side character. And for Kang to really assert himself as this big bad-esque villain, he should do something like kill Scott Lang. Yep. So even though I'd be very sad about that, I don't think Scott Lang is making it out of Ant-Man 3.
Well, I will admit that when I first saw the title to the sequel to Ant-Man as Ant-Man and the Wasp, my initial thought was, oh, wouldn't it be kind of cool if they made sort of a trilogy where it was like Ant-Man, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then just the Wasp? Like, that's the third movie. It's just about the Wasp. So, like, it could require, like, maybe Scott's killed off at the beginning, but also I think you're kind of crazy, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Why? The MCU has a great track record of killing off characters and keeping them dead. They're very easy to pull the trigger on that.
They even kind of brought back Quicksilver in, like, a weird meta way. But, no, I don't think Scott Lang is necessarily going to be Kang's victim, but if this is the first... I think this could be the first time we see like Kang the Conqueror, like the villain that the variant, like that He Who Remains warned us about. I think we might see alternate versions of Kang. We might see a Rama Tut. We might see a Scarlet Centurion somewhere. But I think this version is going to be the big bad. And what it actually makes me think is that he might not be the big bad of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. He might just be sort of the Thanos that shows up at the end, but I think it'll actually be more than that. I think we'll have a different primary villain, and then I think Kang will come in and make a statement and show us that he is going to be the next big bad for the villains to fight, for the Avengers to fight. I don't think it's going to be by killing Scott Lang, because I think Scott Lang has a lot more to do. I think his daughter could possibly become a young Avenger, and I want to see how he deals with that. Someone I think Kang the Conqueror could kill off to make an impact, but not necessarily deter the story like killing Scott Lang. I think Hank Pym has had a pretty complete arc in the MCU. I don't see many other places for him to go. He's gotten his wife back. He spent time with her. He's seen his daughter grow up. He had his time as Ant-Man. He's now trained a new Ant-Man. He's passed on the legacy. I think Kang killing one of the smartest people in the MCU, like who could rival Kang's genius, I think that would make a huge statement. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania could end on sort of a dark note, and we see where Kang goes from there.
Okay, fine, Nick, fine. It's just, as much as I hear what you're saying, you're making a lot of sense, because when I think of killing off characters, I think of arcs, right? And I think of everything that needs to happen next for the character and everything that doesn't, because that's usually the indicator that if writers, don't have any more to do with the character, they're either done forever or they're killed off, because like where else are you going to go from there to make an impact? And I was kind of thinking, you mentioned it about Scott Lang having a daughter who does, Cassie Lang becomes a kind of a young Avenger. She becomes Stature. And in Ant-Man 3, she's recast as someone with very Catherine Newton, I believe her name is, and she's a really I think she's a very talented actress, which kind of shows who's going to be a big star one day. So it kind of shows that they're really trying to make this character really important to go in the long run. And I was thinking in my head that if they kill off Scott Lang, someone who's very likable, someone who's very fun, someone who people don't take seriously for the longest time because he's kind of a joke, and they kill him off by doing something, a heroic sacrifice, then I think that'd be a good way to kind of end that movie and kind of set up the future with Stature, with Wasp taking over and establishing Kang. So all those were the factors into thinking that Scott Lang was going to bite the bullet. But now that you say Hank Pym is definitely probably the more logical choice here for ones who are going to die. As you said, his arc is kind of done. He's gone from this old curmudgeon to this kind of grumpy, but also someone who's been reunited with his wife and's got to have those long walks on the beach and has everything like that. Hank Pym dying would send the impact of keeping an Ant-Man in the MCU who could be Ant-Man and sell all those valuable toys, as well as the mentor figure dying off is a very common thing in a lot of movies that I'm actually surprised Hank Pym made it out of Ant-Man 1, because we had discussed that a little bit before at one point that like we kind of believed when Hank Pym was kind of injured in Ant-Man, that's like, yeah, no, this is it. This is where Hank Pym dies and passes on the torch.
He just got like shot in the chest. I don't think he's okay, guys.
No, but he was fine. Like they had that whole, because even in that movie, his arc was pretty much complete, right? Like he went from away from his daughter and it's almost like the writers were just like, all right, so we can kill him off at the end of this movie in an original draft because he reunites with his daughter and everything's fine. Then like, crap, we should have Janet somewhere. Like let's have it in the second movie and have him be the one to like rescue Janet from like the quantum realm. And that kind of looked like he was going to do it like a sacrifice of some sort, because it was just him alone in the quantum realm. He thought something bad was going to happen. And but now he's there. So now it's the third movie. Perfect time to kill off Hank Pym.
I think you're exactly right, because one thing I noticed when I watched Ant-Man is there's a moment at the end where Hank is sort of like, could it be possible? And he looks over at a picture, and it's him and a woman with her hat like covering her face. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, they thought at the last minute, they were like, oh, we could get Janet back, but we don't have anyone cast. Just
we gotta wait a bit. I love it when they do that in shows, when they hide the face of a character that they're not going to bring in yet.
Right. So I think you're exactly right, and that's probably what they were thinking.
What do you think? How would Hank go out? I guess like what's a fitting way for Hank Pym to die, to leave the MCU? Because I think his legacy is kind of secured. Because I wonder if he's going to get enough credit because he's the one who invented the Pym particles in order to allow them to go back. And I wonder how that's going to be addressed. Is that going to make him more cocky and arrogant? Maybe. But I was just like, what is a good way for him to go? Is it sacrifice? Is it a brutal gut punch of Kang, of him thinking he's safe, and then Kang just comes in and conquers him? Like how does Hank leave the MCU?
He does do that often. I have it in my mind sort of pitched. I think we won't see a whole lot of Kang in Quantumania, but I do think we'll see Chronopolis, which is Kang's like city. It's his sort of kingdom, which we actually, a lot of people believe we sort of got a view of, a hint at in Ant-Man and the Wasp when Hank goes down, and as him and Janet are leaving, it's sort of like in the background there. I think for some reason our heroes will be forced to go to Chronopolis. Maybe they're like finding more healing particles for Ghost or something like that. Maybe Ghost will come back. Who knows? And I think towards the end of the movie, after they've battled whoever I think the main threat will sort of be, Kang's going to show up. And he's going to do something that makes Hank, Hope, Janet, and Scott realize, oh, this is a bad dude. This is like end of the world type stuff. And I think the way Hank goes out is by sacrificing himself to let the other three escape and warn the rest of the Avengers, like Kang is coming. Kind of similar to how Hulk got to go, like Heimdall sacrifices himself so that Hulk can go warn the Avengers Thanos is coming. I could see that sort of happening in a sacrificial sort of way. I think it would wrap up things pretty nicely.
I think you saying that kind of now. Here's how I like that idea a lot, and then here's just a slightly different take on it. That it doesn't sacrifice himself to get them to escape and to leave, because I think that creates the problem of if they escape and they leave, and they're just like, all right, then the next movie should be Kang, and that should be everything. But we have like 3 or 4 years before another Avengers movie where they could do stuff. Like it's like, what are they going to do? So if Hank somehow sacrifices himself to slow Kang down, to slow this version of Kang down, to not to not automatically come and take over and start conquering everything. If he finds a way to trap him in Chronopolis for something that holds him for a short duration ish, for like a few years, I guess, or something like that, that allows Ant-Man to like, and then the movie ends with Ant-Man's like, okay, we need to start thinking of a game plan in order to do this. I think that'd be something that's a little bit interesting. I don't know how all this is going to work with the multiverse with Kang, because I agree with what you said about how Chronopolis is the city that could work very well. That could be holding Kang, but is this like a different multiverse version of Kang, or is this a version of Kang is this our version of Kang? Because I guess we should have one, right? Like,
yeah, probably. So often in the comics, Kang actually fights versions of himself to like be the superior Kang, and we actually sort of got an explanation of like He Who Remains was the guy who won the multiverse war. Like he won, he beat his other variants, and now
I won the multiverse war.
Yeah, exactly. And so so now I think in this, once He Who Remains is gone, the variants come back. I think this new Kang is a more evil Kang who won theoretically the multiverse war and didn't just get all the timelines into one timeline. So all these other universes exist. That's how we still have the multiverse. But this one Kang is ruling it all, and he's ruling it from Chronopolis in the quantum realm, which doesn't exist in time, or it exists like apart from time, basically, on how we got it explained. So Hank could theoretically sacrifice himself, and Kang could be like, I'm on my way, but like 2 seconds of Scott leaving could be 10 years of Kang like following him. So that could happen. I think we'll still see versions. I think it'd be cool in like the Fantastic Four movie for them to fight Rama Tut like they did, and then general audiences who don't know the comic backstory find out at the end that that's a variant of Kang, and things like that. I think that all could still happen with this one Kang the Conqueror, like the true conqueror, having conquered all of the timelines, but still lets them exist as their own timelines.
So it's the last thing I want to touch on is like as we got into Kang's role and potentially an Ant-Man's death with Hank Pym. How do you think that would affect characters like Janet, like Hope, like Scott, if they suddenly lose someone like Hank, their mentor, the one who kind of brought a lot of them together? Like what do you think that how that impacts the characters going forward?
Sure. Well, one, I think it gives Janet more of a chance to shine, because we didn't even get to see her in the movie she was in very much. She showed up at the end. And Janet Van Dyne is one of the original 6 Avengers in the comics. It's Hank Pym, Janet, and then the 4 we know. So I definitely want her to have some more screen time. I want her to sort of be leading this like mini team now, and not only dealing with the fact that her husband just died, but also dealing with the fact that now she needs to step up and take the responsibility and be the sort of leader. I think the person I'll have the most effect on is Scott, because now Scott is the only Ant-Man, the serious Ant-Man that like fought in the 60s. He's gone now.
Stopped missiles and was a big secret agent. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's gone. And now it's your turn. It's your turn. But like, yeah, you fought Thanos with the Avengers, but it's your turn. This big threat's coming. It's time for you to step up and be this hero that we all know you are.
I love that, because I think I love it when they turn kind of more comedic characters and give them something a little bit more serious to do. And I think that kind of arc, that kind of everything that you just explained, would make Ant-Man one of the most interesting characters in the MCU, because we haven't really dealt with that before. All of our heroes are, as of now that we've seen our first generation heroes, right? All the big ones, they've all been themselves. But now Ant-Man would have to be like, okay, I have to continue on this legacy, and I think that's going to be a very important theme going on, because we're going to see a lot of that going forward. We're going to see like Miss Marvel kind of carrying on the legacy of Captain Marvel. We're going to see Kate Bishop carrying on the mantle of Hawkeye, Yelena kind of dealing with Black Widows type of thing. So I think that would follow the theme of where the MCU is going really well, and turn Scott into this to this very fascinating character. And he's already he's a fun character, but let's peel back those layers a bit more. I think Scott can handle this too. So I think that about wraps up today's episode. Thank you all so much for joining us on another exciting CBR Saga episode. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick, for joining me today, and we'll be back next time. Nick, we should probably start learning some multiverse rules, because I feel like that's going to be very important.
Don't talk to your past selves. Sports betting on sports. Don't do that. Back to the future.
Back to the future type rules. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. See you next time.